Hello, and welcome to A Sweet Surrender. My name is Erica Nance, and I am a type 1 diabetic. I've been a type 1 diabetic for 29 years in December. I was diagnosed at the age of 9, and I'm 38. So that means 29 years of chronic illness. Type 1 diabetes, if you are not sure what that means, is when the body, it's an autoimmune disease when the body attacks the cells in the pancreas, and the pancreas can no longer produce insulin. What insulin is it's a hormone that regulates blood sugars. Every time you eat, insulin is given into the body and it is able to regulate your blood sugars, which goes to the organs for energy. This is not a medical podcast by any means. This is not a podcast that talks about tips for good blood sugars. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just an expert in my experience with diabetes, but there are a plethora of podcasts out there for medical advice with diabetes. This is just not one of them. What this is essentially the 9-year-old in me having a voice for the first time. When talking to my husband, I said, I want to do a podcast. I've had this on my mind for a long time. And the gremlin in my head was going, who's going to listen to this? Who cares? You have nothing to say. Blah, 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 blah. And my husband looked at me and he said, who cares? Do it for you. Tell your story to yourself and connect the parts of you that were 9, so confused and so, there's no, handbook for it for the future. And so do this for the years and years of the day in, day out struggles and joy that you just haven't shared. So here we are. I would like to start by saying a story that a pastor told me. And that is, if every single person in the world were to write their story on a piece of paper and throw it into a big bowl, and then each one of us shuffles it up, they shuffle it up, each one of us picks out a piece of paper, reads it out loud, and hears somebody else's story. There are stories that can bring us to our knees. And I'm sure most of us would read a lot of these stories and go, I'm good. I'll take my life. Thank you. And that is also the struggle that I deal with is, this disease isn't the worst of the worst. There are so many other people out there going through extremely painful and extremely heartbreaking medical issues. But what my goal for this podcast is to find my tribe. There are so many of us diabetics out there who have an individual story, and it can feel lonely, but with each one of our stories, there are so much emotion, there's so much we have in common, and I think a lot of us are holding that in. There is not a lot of talk about the emotional aspect of having diabetes. I also am going to be interviewing people with chronic illness in general. And chronic illness is really known for a day in, day out medical issue where it affects your day to day life, could possibly be fatal and lasts for a year or more. There are millions and millions of people out there who have a chronic illness and walk around every day with an armor of bravery, and they walk around with a cloak around them, feeling unheard, unseen, and invalidated. And I pray that those with specific chronic illnesses to find their tribe, because there's nothing more validating than speaking with somebody with and anything in life, but with a chronic illness who can go, you too? I feel that way too. No medical advice, nothing like that, just emotions, normalcy, authenticity. Welcome to the human race. You feel that too, so do I. The comfort in that is indescribable. So I hope you find your tribe. So This podcast came to me about 10 years ago of the thought of chronic illness. If you think about it, you know, insulin was one of the first medical advances, happened in 1922, where lives were turned around. With diabetes before 1922, it was basically a death sentence. And there's two Canadians who derived insulin from a dog. They put it into a 14-year-old diabetic boy, and a miracle happened, and it worked. And they found this kid didn't have diabetes anymore, as in they had it, but they were able to live and survive with insulin for years and years and years. So, in general, with chronic illness, we went thousands and thousands of years with you get the chronic illness, it's part of life, and unfortunately, you pass away. The beauty now is, starting in the 40s, there was chemotherapy. Then there started to be vaccines, prosthetics, antibiotics, steroids. You name it. There is basically a medication now to prolong life for a majority of chronic illness. And the question is, what do we do with this? Our brains are on this new frontier of we've never were able to live with the emotional in and outs of chronic illness. And there's no handbook at all. So like I said, we are brave, and just a lot of misunderstanding, but you are not alone. And there's so much in you that nobody knows about every single day. And in my personal story of diabetes, I'm going to be interviewing others with diabetes and other chronic illnesses too. But just to have that tribal part of diabetes is important to me. But then also learning from other people's story, whether it be, an amputation or, a kidney transplant, which I'll be speaking to a friend about in the future. But essentially, my goal of this podcast is to have people talk about the mourning stages of their chronic illness. In my experience in talking to other people, you really do go through the 5 stages of mourning. It's a death of your body, in a sense, of the specific part of your body. It's, for my instance, my body betraying me, just killing my pancreas for no reason. I think it's genetic, but just nothing I did to get diabetes. Being diagnosed at 9 and then being told there'll be a cure by 18 by my doctor, I was like, I can do this for 9 years. But yeah, where was I going with that? Well, regardless, it's the day in, day out. This can be exhausting. So there has been a surrender for me. And this has been a long journey for me of being a poster child of diabetes, being a national commercial, being the gung-ho, perfect, smiley diabetic, to a type of despair I didn't even know was possible in my life, and a lot surrounding my diabetes. And kind of just feeling like I've been in this hurricane and never really took time to just mourn. Um, up until recently, I surrendered and just admitted this is hard. This is really hard day in, day out. Like, this can be really exhausting. They say diabetics, type 1s, on average, have 300 more decisions they make every day than the average person. And I really can't even imagine not having diabetes because of the free space in my head. It is hard. And saying it's hard doesn't mean I'm weak. It doesn't mean I'm comparing myself to others. It doesn't mean I'm throwing a pity party. What it means to me is a form of surrendering. It's a form of looking this disease in the face and saying, Like, it's not me versus you. Like, I'm not denying that. I'm not angry at it. I'm saying, hey, come join me. Come join me in my journey. Let's stop fighting each other. Let's just take a deep breath, accept that I have diabetes, accept that, it's a thing and it sucks sometimes. But the denying and the fake, I'm fine, everything's fine, blah, 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 it got exhausting. And I think a lot of that is because of the misunderstanding and the miseducation around type 1 diabetes, and just the dumb things people say. I mean, so I just have learned not to really talk about it because bless people's hearts, but have you tried cinnamon or, you name it, I've heard it. You do eat too much sugar. And after a while, you just kind of shut down. And I'm sure it was all in a good meaning behind it. But, there's a lot of misunderstanding. So this podcast is empowering for me because so much of diabetes has been black and white, perfection, wanting to please the doctor with all these perfect scores and numbers and, don't eat candy. If you eat candy, you're bad. Or if your blood sugars go high, you're bad. If they're not, then you're good. Um, there's just a lot of black and white with diabetes. And what the Lord has been showing me is this vision of a rainbow. Um, Instead of black and white, I don't really like the term gray, but I look at it as a rainbow. And there is sadness and there are frustrations and silent bouts of anger that, anyone with chronic illness, but in my case, type 1 diabetes, that I have experienced, that I have shamed myself for. Um, but the beautiful part too of this rainbow of my journey is I have um, refined myself. I have learned so much empathy that you can look at somebody and not know their story. I've heard so many times I would look at you and not think you're diabetic. And um, that really was that aha moment that there are millions of people out there doing a silent battle that many can't understand. So essentially, just getting real and authentic with myself and others of this journey, of the stages of mourning, and of coming to a surrendering place of, yeah, this is hard, but you know, I'm proud of myself, and there have been joys out of it. Um, I mean, I feel like I have a dissertation in my own personal life that many people um, will never understand. And essentially, too, this podcast is there is wisdom with 28 years of type 1 diabetes. And, you know, parents of diabetics, it is a whole different ballgame. And I cannot imagine what you go through. My target audience for this is those living with the disease to really listen and go, I get it. And parents listening sounds terrible, but so glad you can join me in this. Um, but your child or your sister or your family member who struggle with it, it's kind of like we are in this tribe for better or for worse. And as a family member listening to this and listening to my interviews, it may give some more understanding of the emotional experience we're going through, but I'm here for those day in, day out with this disease. And I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored to be in a position in my life of health, not just surviving, but thriving. And there are many times in my life I didn't think I would be here, not in a um, pity party way, but in a way of actual really hard times with this disease. So, mostly emotionally. So, like I said, grateful to be here. And I will be interviewing friends and new friends and old friends about their journey of the morning and their journey of surrendering. So, um, thank you for listening, even if it's just me listening. Good job, Erica. Good job, little girl in me. And Yeah, hope to speak to you soon, and God bless.